So let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar about recruiting and developing the right behaviours for the organisation. The presentation is scheduled to end at 1 p.m. today, but we will be running Q&A between 1 and 1:15. You are all on mute and anonymous, but please do ask questions if you can in the Q&A function. The chat is fine, but the Q&A function would be good, and we'll answer these at the end. We've got a pretty good turnout today, so we have over 100 people, which is great. We hope we can make it sort of productive and informative. So as a quick overview, today we'll be highlighting a major problem we've seen when companies hire, and we want to play our part in addressing this. We'll also provide a toolkit to take away, and we'll share the recording and a copy of the slides. I'm Ryan Henshaw, and I run Herringbone Search. We specialize in finding leaders who are experienced in driving go-to-market. Our focus is on the technology space, and our firm helped our clients to grow by more than 110 million, but by more than 100 million pounds in revenue in 2019, which is something we're really proud of. Today, we have Greg Lemaitre, who is CEO and co-founder at Derby. I got to know Greg in his previous role as MD at GfK, a large global market research firm. I tried to unsuccessfully headhunt him a couple of times for a few roles, but we've remained in touch, and I find what he's doing around culture fascinating.
Thanks, Ryan. And hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you all today to talk about this very important topic. At Derby, we help leaders identify and then develop the behaviors that will lead them to greater success. Our approach combines data and group coaching. We collect data on organizations, looking at 18 drivers of performance and engagement. And we measure things like belonging, empowerment, agility, and resilience. And then with group coaching, we help develop the areas that will contribute to greater success. Before co-founding Derby, I was in business for 15 years in leadership positions, both in a startup environment as well as a multinational environment. And like Ryan, I have recruited many people, interviewed many more. I've made some great hires, but also made some big mistakes. And so during this webinar, Ryan and I will be distilling our joint experiences and also the research we've been doing for this webinar. And I really hope that this helps you attract and develop the right behaviors for your team and your business.
Thanks, Greg. So Greg and I got talking recently about employee retention and the huge cost to businesses of new employees either leaving or failing. And according to a 2017 Leadership IQ study of 5,000 hiring managers who hired 20,000 people, 46% of new hires fail in the first 18 months. And what they mean by fail, it sort of means is terminated, left under pressure, receive disciplinary action, or receive negative performance reviews. And having both worked in hiring for some time and having discussed with our networks over the past few weeks, this research seems to be pretty accurate across the board. So as new recruits are leaving firms or failing at a rate of 1 in 2, which is significant, I'm sure you'd all agree, there must be something obvious that we can do about this. We all know the cost of a mishire is immense, and I've seen varying stats showing that the cost can be anywhere from 3 to 18 times annual salary. So these costs could include recruiting fees, desk costs, salary, but are much more significant when you consider the opportunity cost versus hiring the right person, the impact on business performance and momentum, and the negative impact on the performance of other employees. And this could easily run into the millions when you think of the difference a great leader can make. Steve Jobs and Guy Kawasaki referred to the bozo explosion, which is the impact of hiring the wrong leader, who goes on to hire the wrong management team, who then in turn go on to hire the wrong employees for the business. And this becomes very, very difficult to reverse. So to understand the cause of the issue, it's helpful to look at what you need to consider when recruiting. And ideally, what you want to be able to answer are two questions. Will they be able to do the job based on their skill set? So do they have the technical ability? And will their behaviors and attitudes contribute to the success of the organization? So Greg, which one of these is where hiring managers fail?
Yes, Ryan, good question. And obviously, as Ryan and I approached this webinar, we had our views, and still, we were very surprised by what we saw, and still looking at the same study actually that Ryan referred to earlier. They asked the hiring managers who talked about having failure in their recruitment, the reasons for the failure, and in 11% of the cases, they referred to skills or technical abilities as being an issue, whereas in 89% of the cases, 9 times out of 10, they talked of behavioral or attitudes being the reason for the failure. And I want to pause here. It doesn't mean that technical ability or skills don't matter in your recruitment process. What it means is that where hiring managers fail, why do we get nearly half of new recruits failing, is related to behaviors and attitudes. And we believe it's the ability to either identify the right behaviors and attitudes in the candidates or nurturing the right behaviors and attitudes in the new recruits. So, as we're progressing here, we really felt like we were onto something meaningful for businesses. There is a real problem. Nearly half of new hires failing in the first 18 months. There is a significant cost. We did some modeling from the numbers that Ryan shared earlier. I mean, you can almost unlimited cost potentially with a wrong hire, but still, in the range of 5 to 30+% of profits that has an impact on businesses. And obviously, also the human cost of not recruiting the right person. And we've got a clear cause. We know now that in 9 out of 10 times, the reasons are related to behaviors and attitudes. And that's why for the rest of this webinar, we'll be focusing on that specifically. How do you identify and develop the right behaviors and attitudes? So given the importance of the topic, the stakes are very high. We really urge you to follow a structured process and recommend 3 steps that you follow. The first one, which is probably the most important one, but also the most difficult, is identifying what you need as a business, as a team. I'll be covering this. Ryan will then talk about how do you probe what you need in candidates. And then I'll be covering how do you reinforce what you need through your onboarding. So starting with step 1, because this is so important, we really recommend you're careful on that step. And the best way to respond to the question, what behaviors do I need for this role, is actually placed at 3 levels. And you need to look at it at an organizational level, at a team level, and at a role level. They're all important. I would say if you're hiring for senior people or you're hiring large numbers of people, pay even more close attention to the organizational level, because those people, or the large numbers of people, will have a big influence on what happens in your business. And typically, the hiring managers that do pay attention to behaviors and attitudes will focus more on the role, maybe a little bit on the team, but very little on the organization. And so what we recommend here is just having, answering 2 questions for each level. They will be in the toolkit that Ryan mentioned earlier, so you don't have to take notes. And the 2 questions at the organizational level are, which behaviors prevail in my organization today? And which behaviors do I need to promote to be more successful? So that's at the organizational level. At the team level, which behaviors will contribute to success, whether they're existing or new behaviors, and which behaviors will help somebody really fit or not fit in this team. And then at the role level, which behaviors will contribute to success and which behaviors will go against success in this role, because obviously you want that person to be successful. So to make this more practical, I just want to use an example where imagine you are the CEO of a 250 people software company. You are hiring for the chief commercial officer role of that business. And you're not very happy with the level of collaboration that's happening in the business, and you see the impact on your ability to ship effectively new features to your customers, and also getting the right feedback to the product and engineering team. So in that scenario, what you could, and it's just an example, it doesn't apply in every circumstances, but as an example, for the organizational level, you may look for somebody who's more collaborative. You may even push it to looking for somebody who is vulnerable, who is willing to show up his or her weaknesses and talk about his or her failures, because that actually really promotes collaboration in an organization. At the team level, well, that person would be part of the leadership team. So you really need somebody who takes ownership. You don't want to, maybe you don't like sales, you don't want to worry about it. So you really want to let that person go and run with that role. And you probably need somebody who's honest, because you want to have the hard conversations within the leadership team to address the real issues head on and solve them as they appear. At the role level, you've got a sales leader, really. So maybe you could look for somebody with a high empathy that helps understand what people need, whether they need to be challenged, whether they need to be supported given the circumstances. It also helps build deeper connections with the clients and understand their needs as well. Maybe you also want to look for somebody who's got high agility. Maybe the market is going to shift a lot over the next 2 years, and that person will need to adapt plans, sales plans, and sales strategies if needed. So that is just an example. Now, how do you identify those needs in your circumstances? Well, number one, don't do it on your own. I really urge you not to do this, but instead engage your team, engage people who potentially would report to that person, engage the peers. Not only will you get great learnings from that experience and wisdom from the people on the ground and the front line. They know a lot on the answers of those questions. But also you will have the opportunity to plant some seeds into them so that they kind of start thinking, okay, well, what behaviors are expected of me as well? And talking about empathy, agility, taking ownership, all those are great things that you want to plant into your people's minds as well. Well, the way we do it, by the way, at Derby is we like collecting data, especially at the organizational level, sometimes at the team level, across those 18 drivers of performance and engagement that I mentioned earlier. And then we identify what's there, what's sort of the current state, and then work with the team to identify what do we need less of, what do we need more of. Just 2 last points. Don't look for Superwoman or Superman. She doesn't exist in reality. So focus your search on 5 to 8 traits maximum, really not more. And don't confuse behavior fit with uniformity. In fact, because you rather focus your search on certain behavior and attitudes, you should be able to expand your scope of experiences and backgrounds that you in your search, and that should bring in more diversity into your team, and that's proven to be actually a great driver of results in teams. So that's another plus for why actually paying attention to behaviors and attitude. And so now with this step, you've identified what you need. And Ryan, how do you assess the candidates?
Great, thanks, Greg. And Yes, so now let us look a little further into how and where we can observe and test behaviours during the recruitment process. Now, of course, interviews themselves are key and indeed are useful and necessary, and it's critical to spend as much time as you can with candidates in a formal setting. But it must be said that often traditional interviews tend to focus on the technical aspects of a role only, and only a small percentage of people, as Greg said, fail due to that technical aspect. So it's the 11%, in fact. And it's therefore throughout the whole recruitment process, so not just the interviews, throughout the whole recruitment process, where we can identify a candidate's behavioural traits. And what I mean by that is observing and assessing how candidates behave from start to finish. So not just in interviews. If you observe someone from the outset when they're not expecting any sort of assessment, this is where you'll gain excellent insights into everyday behaviour and how they will likely behave in their new role and in your business. So effectively, you are what I call sort of using the whole process as a test. And again, this is, I believe is where you see true behaviour, which is, the 89% of why people fail. And using this whole process as a test includes sort of looking at their communication style and tone. So that's in emails, calls, and meetings. First impressions, either written, in person, over video. It's cliched, but first impressions are important, and I go as far as to say they do count, whether we like it or not. How they behave with different people throughout the process. So the key there is behaviour with different people. And it could also be in that final salary negotiation. So that's a sort of pretty heated moment, can be a heated moment of exchange. You might see some great behaviours there. You might see some behaviours that, are not right, in which case you'd have a really difficult decision to make. So by observing a candidate carefully throughout all of these parts, we begin to shape that holistic view, which is what we want. And it's also important that every person involved in the process is aware of what these behaviours could look like in the recruitment process. Okay, so not just interviews, in that recruitment process. So from recruiters, so internal, external, administrators, team members, board members, and even investors who might engage with candidates. So for example, if, as Greg mentioned, if you're looking for empathy and agility from a candidate, all of the people in that process I've just mentioned should understand exactly how candidates can demonstrate these characteristics. So someone empathetic should be curious about how other people in the process are feeling, and then integrate this information into words and actions to build rapport. Agile folks should be comfortable with change and uncertainty. So can they adapt easily to surprises and new requirements in the process? As an example, and I think we have the client, not the candidate, on the webinar today. We had one candidate in a sort of advanced 6-way panel video interview who had technical issues. He couldn't see any of the other attendees. He didn't tell anyone. They all assumed everything was fine. He was unsuccessful, and the feedback was that he didn't read the room. So this was definitely an agility issue, as well as I'd also say confidence. Now, this was an MD level role, and you just need somebody at this level to be agile and confident, of course. Additionally, your team should be cross-referencing and sharing this feedback amongst themselves consistently, so that person who first engages to everyone in that process, throughout the process, not just at the end when someone's at a third stage, throughout that process is important. You could also craft your whole interview process to test behavior. So if agility is important, you might plan to throw someone new into the interview last minute, turning a one-on-one into a panel. You can see how someone copes. And also, as per Greg's point, be sure to prioritize. If you have 10 different people in the process, which often there is, and they're looking for 15 different behavioral traits, it becomes impossible. These 10 people will find it much easier if you look at the sort of 4, 5, 6 that might be key. Greg mentioned as many as 8, but I would think 4, 5, 6. Sorry to contradict, and then to share that feedback amongst decision makers. And make sure that when compromises are made, these key behaviors remain top priority. And what you're doing here is you are removing that gut feel element. Often I'll talk to hiring managers who just can't put their finger on why they feel someone's not right. And I think using the system would make that a lot easier. And then using the whole process as a test is actually something you can all take action on right now. You may find that you or your hiring managers are ignoring clues right now, and you could easily rectify this. Now, of course, as Greg said, the technical is important. Interviews remain extremely important. In fact, we spend 3+ hours methodically interviewing anyone before they make a shortlist. But in summary, there's a lot more to consider than just what happens in the interview or sort of other formal assessments. One last important point is that candidates will also be using your whole process as a test, so probably subconsciously, and they will be making decisions on how your organization behaves outside of interviews, and what they experience could be the key as to why that great candidate wants to join your organization or not. So make sure that your whole process sort of reflects the way that your organization behaves, which you would hope is positive.
Thanks, Ryan. And so great. We found an amazing candidate, and we made an offer, and she's accepted. And now you still don't have Superwoman or Superman. She may become, Superwoman at some point. And onboarding is a crucial step to make that happen, to really set the new candidate, the new recruit for success. Looking at studies, I've been surprised actually at how impactful onboarding is. And really every study reflected that. Just referring here to which are showing very interesting data points. Standard companies with a standard onboarding process have a 54% greater new hire productivity and 50% higher retention. So imagine what having not only a standard, but also a behavior-focused onboarding process could do to your business. And here I just want to share some clues as to how you could do this, and just really looking at a timeline. And again, you'll have more details on the toolkit, so no need to take notes. So first of all, engage before the person starts. You may want to explain the behaviors you were probing for and how you probed for them, because that will also plant some seeds in them, knowing what you're expecting. Share the onboarding plan with expectations and milestones. That's helpful. Invite the person to the team events. I wouldn't impose them, but if you have a weekly call or maybe a one-off call with a team, that would be very nice. And share information, keep it high level, business related, team related, maybe your values, your mission, your vision. Just get the person a little excited really about starting in your team and company. And you may want to do a one-on-one call prior to this person joining, maybe a few days or a week prior. During the first day, really focus on making that person feel welcome with just the right introductions to the right people, to the whole team, preferably. Avoid surprises, especially on logistics. Make sure she's got a desk, a laptop, a phone, whatever she needs on a first day. Just make it simple. I keep hearing stories of people being dropped into teams, not being introduced, not knowing who to talk to. I mean, this is a no-go. And imagine the tone it sets for people as they join, and the type of behaviors then you're nurturing, when you do this. And then, continue the onboarding. I would at least make it until the end of the probation period. Salesforce.com, as an example, has 6-month onboarding, which I think is great. And while the person is onboarding, I wouldn't give that person the license to recruit yet, because you don't want to have this bozo effect that Ryan referred to earlier. So, keep a bit of safety for yourself. And just to help you, also want to share quickly some principles that can guide you in shaping your onboarding process. So make it long lasting. And what I mean by this is, avoid the avalanche of information. Try and make it progressive and bite-sized, whether it's the information or the meetings of people. Sometimes people meet everybody in 1 week and then nobody. It's too much. Bring clarity to the person. I mentioned earlier, setting behavior expectations very clearly, and tracking progress. That will sort of force you to give feedback, but also to get feedback, and give you the opportunity to course correct if needed. Belonging, that is really important, especially now that we're all remote, or most of us are remote. So really put special emphasis on creating the sense of belonging. You could put a rule, when you set meetings for people to get introduced to one another, just to really have them spend half their time on creating personal connections, to talk about themselves as individuals, as opposed to just as business people. Because it does help teams to be more effective when they feel like they know themselves very well. And do this not just within the team and beyond the team. And then last point, and not least really, is about safety. Okay, yes, set reasonable expectations, that's important. But there is a bigger point here, which is related to trust. Google ran a study on 180 of their teams and looked at what are the drivers of success of a team, what makes a team really good. And they looked at hundreds of variables. They looked at the quality of the people, the quality of the manager, whether they were co-located or not, etc., etc. The number one driver of team effectiveness that they found by far was what they called psychological safety. And what it means here is not people being comfortable and then becoming lazy, of course. It means people feeling safe enough to show up as who they are, with their weaknesses, also talking about their mistakes, their failures. And what that creates is an environment where people really learn much faster and from each other, where they feel safe enough to have the very difficult conversations to say, well, you didn't do your job, or, actually we've got a big problem here. And therefore it promotes risk-taking as well. So it's really the opposite of this laziness that you could think of. So really think about creating that trust environment. Also, last point that may surprise you, at the end of this webinar, we're helping you recruiting the right people with the right behaviors, but ultimately, it may actually, you probably will be in a situation where you will make a mistake, or the person has made a mistake. And you want to make it safe to quit for this person as early on as possible. And because the longer this will last, the more impactful negatively this will be on your business, on your team, on your morale, and on your costs. So however painful that may be, what you could do, is when on the very first day of the person, tell the person, actually, if you feel like this is not the right place for you, it's okay. There will be no hard feelings. And in fact, we'll be paying you, for instance, your full probation period salary as an incentive for you to leave early. You don't want this to linger. Yes, okay. And with this, we can conclude.
Yeah, so in summary, there's a huge opportunity when you focus on attracting and developing the right behaviors. Work out what these are at an organizational, team and role level. Use your whole recruiting process as a test, so don't just assess in that interview silo, and take the opportunity to onboard new people thoughtfully. And if you do these, your employee retention will definitely increase along with profits, and you'll have a much happier workforce fit for purpose. So just with that, just like to thank Greg. Obviously, Greg, thanks for your time and efforts and help. It's been great working with you on this. We'd be very happy to sort of share information in a sort of one-on-one forum. So if you'd like to get in touch to set up a call with either of us, or you'd like to talk to both of us at the same time, please just get in touch. You can see the contact details there, but obviously we monitor phones, emails, whatever else it may be to to keep things going. And Lastly, I mean, we will go into the Q&A now, but lastly, thanks to all of you for joining. We hope it's been insightful. I think the toolkit that you'll get will be productive, so you can start putting some things in place and start taking action. And we should be getting that across to you by the end of play tomorrow.